everybody. Before we start this episode of the Geek Buddies here, doing a spoiler review, episode 4 of season 2 of the Bad Batch with Laura Kelly joining us as well. I just want to remind you all that we are powered and sponsored by Carbon Health. CarbonHealth.com. Go there to have your healthcare questions, concerns, or needs addressed by them, either virtually or in person. They got 100 plus clinics all over the U.S., 80 plus clinics in California alone. They're offering COVID testing kits. You know, those numbers are going up, so you want to make sure you get taken care of in life. And hey, if you end up like Tay-O, getting hit by one of those racers, you want to get some healthcare questions, concerns, and needs addressed by them on the go. You can download the app there for Carbon Health and find the nearest location near you. All right, on with our spoiler review episode.
Ding.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this brand new spoiler review episode of the Bad Batch from the
Geek
Buddies
and Laura Kelly.
Hey! Yeah. We're back at it again here to talk about another episode from season 2 of the Bad Batch. Faster. Really cool. This is basically Fast and Furious meets Star Wars here, with a lot of allusions to Clone Wars, a lot of allusions to the Phantom Menace, some fun stuff going on throughout this episode. And I think more went on than people might be thinking. I've seen some people already commenting this is a bit of a filler episode. I couldn't disagree more, and I'm excited to be jumping into this episode and talking about it with everybody here on the show. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm the Outlaw, John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor where you're going to get to see me next month on the season premiere of Party Down on Stars.
There you go. Sign up now. Get that free month. And joining us, the co-host of Force Toast Pod, the co-host of the Jedi Way, and someone who we are always happy to have on to talk Star Wars or whatever, the great Laura Kelly. How are you, Laura?
I'm amazing, and I'm starstruck now. I loved those first seasons of Party Down. I'm so excited that it's coming back. Holy shit, yay.
Laura, this is not a huge part. I want to temper your expectations.
Don't talk it down.
I'm still excited. Don't even care.
Featured role.
You're joining the cast of Party Down. That's how we look at it, right? That's how we look at it. But yeah, let's jump into this episode here. Faster. What an interesting name for an episode, and apparently allusion to what George Lucas used to say on the set. He would want things faster and more intense. So a nice allusion to that as well. And this one's a fascinating episode where we go to a new planet. We go and see a version of pod racing that's called riot racing. So it's like pod racing is what you do, what the higher ups do. And I guess riot racing is for the lower classes there. All the madness that's going on there. No rules, no etiquette, no rules of Queensberry, none of that stuff. Getting crazy. Sid gets involved here. The crew is essentially split up because one half of them are on another mission. This half goes with Sid. We get the introduction of a new character here. We find out about Sid's past a little bit, and we get a new droid. Tay-O, we get a new droid here voiced by Sonic's own Ben Schwartz. And for those of us who remember him from Parks and Recreation, absolutely loved him being a part of this as well. So, Vogel, I turn to you first. Thoughts on this episode? Thoughts on this approach and vibe, and what was your feeling coming out of this episode now?
Well, I do think it is kind of an episode, but that doesn't make it a bad episode. I think the 1-2 punch of last week's episode, which was so heavy and so powerful and did all the things that like we love an amazing Star Wars. It was political. It had commentary. It had all these amazing things and like diving into the clones and what was going on with them. Cody was there. And then this was just like fucking racing fun. Like there was just like, I was thinking about it halfway through the episode. I was like, look, about 10 minutes into the episode, you're like, okay, something's going to happen to Tay-O. Tech is going to race. He's going to show that he's really smart, and they're going to help Sid. Like, I know where this episode is going. I know how it's going to end. and I'm having the best time watching this episode. I mean, this episode was like a show-off episode. This was an episode where they were like, hey, remember in Phantom Menace, like even if you hate Phantom Menace, everyone kind of agrees that pod racing was pretty cool. Like the 20 minutes of pod racing of that movie was pretty great. If you grew up in that era, you loved the pod racing video games that came out on the N64. You spent hours and hours and hours playing those. And they were like, let's do pod racing where they can fuck with each other. And it was thrilling. I mean, and like just the vibe and the feel of the pod racing from Phantom Menace with our Bad Batch characters, it was just so much fun. Like I had a blast. And Ben Schwartz, I think, you know, he's sort of the voice of BB-8, so I think that's my favorite Ben Schwartz droid, but Tay-O might be coming up on his heels because Tay-O was a sassy little bitch, and I very much enjoyed him. So I just had a blast from top to bottom. I loved all like the alien cameos, the droid cameos, like it was... I really did get done with this episode and go, oh, between last week's episode and this week's episode, if you keep giving me this, I'm good for season 2.
Yeah, I liken it to like a DJ who, when they play the sad song, they follow right up with that dance song, so you don't wallow too deeply into the sad stuff. So after, it's a great point you bring up, Michael. After last week's episode, which really went in deep, and we missed you on the review, to come back with something like this that is fun and exciting and vibrant, and we see the connective tissues and the moments that these characters really come through for each other, but then also a little bit of an ominous ending as well to kind of keep that through line going about Sid's backstory and Sid's past and how that's going to play out here as an interesting subplot throughout the season. To continue that by the end of the episode, I thought was really smart as well. So you didn't feel too good, but you certainly enjoyed it, but you still had a little bit of the dread by the end. Laura, your thoughts on this episode? As I said, we go to a new planet, we see this racing stuff, but also we find this new character, Mileggi, who is voiced by the great Ernie Hudson, being a part of this and having and giving that final warning, as I mentioned, to the clones before they walk off here with Sid. So we got so much more going on here than we might have anticipated from an episode like this. What did you think?
You know, I really like that it sort of struck a lighter tone. It was a little bit lighter in appearance. We spent a lot of time outside in this episode. And it was sort of a great tech-focused episode, which we really don't have a lot of. He tends to sort of be our man in the chair, our guy with his head down in the data pad. And so it was really kind of a fun change. You get to see him maybe a little bit more in action. Coming off of last week, you know, stepping away from the sort of heaviness of like Order 66 memories and, you know, seeing the sort of redundancy of Crosshair's life as an Imperial tool. You know, we're back out in the sunlight in this episode. Ben Schwartz is here. Like it's definitely just a lighter, frothier episodes in terms of what we've gotten so far in the 4. But I think that they've struck a good balance. You know, I can see maybe where some people might call this a filler episode. I don't necessarily disagree, but I feel like we got some good character development for Tech. I think we got some interesting insight into Sid's colorful past. And I think that Omega, you know, has this strong rapport with Wrecker already, but we're getting a little bit more of her interacting with Tech one-on-one in this episode. And I think that, you know, the reason that they stay and decide to help Sid is because Omega insists on it. So regardless of how Tech, you know, can somehow come off as sort of cold and robotic, we kind of see that like Omega has some influence on him. He is still like a feeling human character. So, you know, the fact that we didn't have any, you know, there was no Hunter, there was no Echo in this episode. And, you know, you just know that wherever they are, they're arguing, which I love the idea of. They're just arguing because Echo is still on this kick of like, we need to be doing more for the galaxy. And so getting to step away from that a little bit, I think it was a good move. From what I've seen so far of this season, I think we've struck a really good balance. So overall, I enjoyed this episode.
Yeah. I can almost see Hunter like turning up the radio just to drown out Echo.
Oh yeah.
Gotta try to find something else to listen to. Yeah, Shannon, we get. I think Laura brings up an excellent point. We get a tech-centric episode. We saw Tech and Omega having those interactions in the first episode of this season. You know, he's teaching her about the ships and he's quizzing her, almost kind of a little more of a harder, well, not a hard ass, but a little more of a harder dad who's like expecting her to step up to the plate intellectually. Not a lot of emotion here, but here Omega, as Laura said, having a little bit of influence on him. You know, she can lead Wrecker by the nose, but Tech is a little more of a harder sell, and he's the one that eventually kind of steps in, playing the Danny Zuko to Tay-O's Kaneki there, taking over to drive the car, to drive the ship. So, I mean, but it's her influence that makes him do that. So what'd you think about all of this episode? And of course, Tay-O is this new droid in the Star Wars universe.
So one, Grease totally popped into my head at that moment in the episode. I was like, oh, it's like Danny and Kaneki right before they race for pinks. But it really exemplifies why Omega is the moral center of the team, because, we keep talking about that the Bad Batch owes, they're working off a debt to Sid. The moment she's taken by alien Ernie Hudson,
yeah,
they're done. Like, if she's gone, like they're good to go. But because Omega has established a bit of a relationship and a rapport with Sid, and knowing that, like, hey, this is not right. Like, let's not let this happen. Despite what Sid has done in the past to get herself in this situation, which Tech mentions, saying like this is becoming a pattern with her. The fact that Omega doesn't let that happen, even though ultimately it would benefit her and her brothers, she doesn't let that happen. And as you said, John, she leads Wrecker around by the nose.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that Tech made a non-logical decision, because when he said, "I'll be the racer," like there's not a whole lot in it for them. So the fact that Tech does make that non-logical decision based off of Omega's insistence, I think that was, even though I do agree it's a filler episode. I mean, there was some nice character building. I thought Ben Schwartz was fantastic as Tay-O, and watching a droid who is very proud of their droidness, that seems a little more human, talking to a human who seems a little bit more like a droid. I thought that was a really nice juxtaposition to the action. This is the type of script that if this were a show that Vogel and I are working on, Vogel would assign the script to me. And as I'm watching the action, I'm like, they could have gone farther. Like I did enjoy the racing, but watching how Tech gets out of that situation ultimately at the end, I'm like, you could have gone farther. And I think they could have pushed it a little more comedically. I was not a fan of them getting rid of Tay-O. I was like, that was a mistake. Like, if you blast off his arms and his legs, that's okay. But having Ben Schwartz there with Omega and Wrecker, I think would have benefited the episode ultimately.
Oh, like his head pop up or something like that, right?
Absolutely, just a hovering torso, critiquing Tech's piloting, and then they get to have that sort of nice resolution at the end. They're like, "Hey, for a human, not so bad."
Yeah.
I think ultimately that was a mistake.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I guess you can take it up with the writer of this episode, Matt Mignowitz. Make sure you send in an email to him. But yeah, and the action, Stuart Lee directed this episode. I thought the action was fun. I really enjoyed. Look, it's no secret that I'm not a big Phantom Menace fan. The pod racing stuff doesn't do that much for me. But in this episode, I really enjoyed this riot racing. This is my kind of racing. This is the stuff. If it ain't, if you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing. I love this kind of stuff. This was great. The cheating stuff that went on with Mileggi's guys. Of course, if you're going to play in this sandbox, this dirty, dirty sandbox, don't be thinking there's going to be any kind of nobility here, any rules that people are following. So I'm not
think
surprised.
They were cheating.
Well, fair enough. I guess so.
Cheating in Riot.
They were cheating, right?
Like,
yeah, good point. Mike.
If it was a regular race, that's cheating. Like,
that's true.
It's Sebulba cheats in the pod racing and Phantom Menace, but everybody was pretty clear on what they were doing and nobody cared because it was a riot race.
Yeah.
The rules are there are no rules.
That's right. What about the voiceover guy who was calling all the match, calling all the races there, and he's like, "Tech, that's it. That's his name, Tech."
That whole sequence. I wrote down all of the names, and I'm like, "That's really funny."
All right, well, let's jump into this thing here. I'll break it down into two halves, basically. So, as we were alluding to before, people are missing here. Initially, at the start of the episode, we see that Echo and Hunter are off because we're at Sid's place. Echo and Hunter are off on a mission, transporting nerf herders. I don't know, transporting something here.
No.
Nerf nuggets.
No.
Nerf nuggets.
Nerf nuggets.
Sorry, Nerf nuggets.
By the way, that means basically Star Wars has their version of Chicky Nuggies. It is canon now. There are Nuggies in the Star Wars universe. They are Nerf nuggets. I was very excited to find out that little bit of information. Grogu is very happy right now.
I wonder if they show up next week at Disneyland or Disney World with the Star Wars lane. We shall see. But anyway, so Sid brings Omega, Wrecker, and Tech as a personal security after essentially verbally attacking them and saying, well, you guys need to be my security. I'm going to go do this. And Muscles, you definitely need to come with me. Tech initially resents, but goes along with them. And they head on off to this planet. And we see that Sid has we go off to this racing area, riot racing stuff. We see all this stuff. We find out that Sid has a droid that is essentially her ringer, as she calls him. And his name is Tay-O. And he's the one that we see winning the race while we're out there watching this whole thing. Then we come down. Tay-O jumps out of the pod, walks right on up, and then immediately has a back and forth with Tech, and which he calls him the spectator or something like that.
Spectator.
Yeah, right. With Wrecker laughing along to that, but then Sid kind of stops it as soon because, of course, male droid, male clones, it's males anyway. There's going to be a lot of measuring going on, and that's essentially what's going on. Sid's like, enough of this nonsense. You got to focus on what you need to do here. And then Mileggi walks up, and that's the Ernie Hudson character. What an intimidating character and design as well. And essentially seeing, kind of that using that size, using the shadow, and we see that like the clones, even Wrecker's a little timid or a little nervous in this situation, but certainly Omega, seeing the way he steps to Omega is a bit unsettling as well. We find out that Mileggi and Sid have a past here, and he's essentially trying to convince her to be a little dirtier, and she says, not my way anymore. I've got a guy here. Tay-O is going to take your guys on. He's going to win this whole thing, and then they set up a bet, and essentially saying, this is the amount and this kind of thing. So Sid puts herself on the line for this situation, and we go to the race, and in the race, of course, Mileggi's pilots, Michael says they don't cheat, but they do some nefarious things here. And they essentially win the race by knocking out Tay-O, which causes Sid to be in debt to Mileggi. Right when they're about to take Sid, Omega steps up and says, wait a minute, what if we do another race? And if we win, then we keep Sid. But if not, you get double. And Mileggi steps to Omega and says, okay, kid, if you I don't know, you know what you're doing, but all right, let's make it happen. Tech is initially hesitant for this. Wrecker's also agreeing with this. And then Omega talks them into it, says something's going to happen to Sid if we don't do this. So then they're united front and then Mileggi takes Sid away as collateral for this bet here. So let's stop there. Michael, what an intro here. Really fascinating to walk into a new world, see another version of racing, but also seeing the different species that are there. We see there in the stands, and also seeing this new character of Mileggi and this new droid of Tay-O. What do you think about this whole sequence leading up to Sid being taken off by Mileggi?
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely, one part, like I said, one part of Star Wars is what we got last week, which is like, here's some political commentary, here's some social stuff, we're going to dive into the clones. This was the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen version of a Star Wars episode. Like, from the beginning of the episode when Omega and Wrecker are playing Dejarik and you're like, close in on like stop motion. I love the fact that we basically have a CG version of stop motion creatures as we're harkening back to like the original version in A New Hope. And then, like you said, we get to this new planet. I believe it's called Zephadon. Yeah,
Zephadon,
I think.
Sorry.
But yeah, like you said, you're just looking through there and you're like, oh, there's some Aqualish, there's a Pantoran, there's some Twi'leks, there's this, there's that, and all the way up to, like you said, Mileggi. Dawitans are like big in Star Wars lately. I mean, like I think like there's a Dawitan in Fallen Jedi, like he's one of the Inquisitors. And then if you read the High Republic, Pan-Eta, who's one of the Nihil, is a Dawitan. So like to John's point, like these big sort of like these aliens that are these big, really imposing guys, but what they do with Pan-Eta in the High Republic, as Laura knows, because I was texting her and geeking out about stuff, and they also did with this Mileggi character is, even though they're big, they don't come across as like monstrous brawlers. They're not like a giant Gamorrean guard. Like they have like a little bit of like class to them. They're a little bit of like it's a stylish kind of mobster vibe that I kind of really dug. Like it was a lot of fun. So yeah, like just across the board. To John's point about pod racing and the prequels, like This episode also made me realize, as someone who has said several times, like, I'm an original trilogy guy. When the prequels came out, they were not my favorite thing in the world. But over the years, there are things that turned me off in the prequels that I have come to embrace as part of the Star Wars universe. And certainly in this episode, just the entire vibe, the stands, the racing, everybody like buying their Mantel mix, like everything that's going on. And to your point, the announcers who have this very sort of like, all right, who we got here? It's these races coming. Like, when I saw that in Phantom Menace, I was like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. What is this? But now that the pit droids running around, like, I love all of it. Like, just it was so much fun to watch all of this. And then to Laura's point, I loved having a tech-centric episode. It's very clear to me that they recognized when they got in the room for season 2, they were like, we had a lot of things. We really focused on Hunter and Omega, crosshairs. We really knew, like, I feel like tech kind of got short shrift. Let's dive into tech. So starting the season with tech sort of tutoring Omega and then leading into this episode that is 100% tech getting to do his thing, I think was a lot of fun. And then as far as Tay-O goes, I already said I think Ben Schwartz like just nailed it, like knocked it out of the park. But also the design of Tay-O was really cool. I mean, for all that we have like these iconic droids, we have our protocol droids, we have our astromechs, we have our droids, we have all these different droids. Every time they give us a new kind of droid, it's really exciting. And to have the way he moved, the way his head was on a swivel, just like gave him this sort of swagger in the way that he walked, like it really just complemented Ben Schwartz's amazing voice performance. So it was a ton of fun. And like Shannon said, having a droid who is like, you can't calculate this. It's all instinct, bro. And then having the human being the one that's like, I can calculate this. Don't you worry about it. Like, it was just a great inverse of the entire thing. So the whole thing was just, it was the purest form of what we all love about Star Wars from just like a fun silliness aspect. And I was just like eating it up.
Well, one of the funny things is he's a droid, but he's like, it's all instinct. It's all instinct. Like that's one thing that was, you point out, Mike, that I thought I could not get over that and how hilarious that is that he's the one. Because I mean, droids, we know C-3PO calculating the chances. We know, we've seen other droids here who are incredibly intelligent. So this idea of being able to calculate these kind of things, but the fact you've got a droid saying it's all, you know what, I feel it. I go by the seat of my pants. It's
well,
hilarious.
It does kind of bring up. I mean, this is like I don't know when Star Wars is going to deal with this or if they're ever going to deal with it, but I am not clear on droids and what they are or are not. Like droid rights are treated. Well, droids are treated like they have no rights and that they're like property, but they clearly have feelings and emotions. Like we have been feeling like poor Laura is about to cry every time a new droid is introduced. Like they're all like, so like this whole sort of back and forth. I mean, I know like even in like the new Mandalorian trailer, when like Din Djarin walks into a droid bar, it looks like they're just like, that was a cool moment. What is it like? Where are we with droids? Because they're sentient. I don't quite know. So it's interesting to me. I think there's just a lot of racism against droids after the Clone Wars. That's what I think. Is it right? Okay. You were in the Republic. You were like, fuck those droids.
Well, we saw that in the last episode, right? The way Rampart spoke to a Crosshair, very much dismissive, very much, as I said in the review, a version of dehumanization of Crosshair. So certainly that's possible here. But Tay-O, I don't know if Laura was necessarily shedding a tear on Tay-O. Maybe you can clear that up for us, Laura. What an interesting character, though. One of my colleagues here, Rafael Montemayor, I love his reviews. He wrote this down in Vulture, and I'm going to read this before we get your thoughts on the first half here, Laura. He says, Tay-O's a funny, interesting character because he's probably the first droid who we've met who is just a total douchebag without any redeeming qualities or childlike innocence. He said, so far we've met kind droids, funny droids who are mistreated by organic, silly battle droids with dumb catchphrases, but not until Tay-O have we met a droid who acts like a character straight out of Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. So I think that's a fantastic comparison for Raphael to use, man. 100%. So Laura, what do you think about this intro here? And we see Sid kind of grabbing up one half of the crew to go with her, essentially being muscle for her situation here with Millegi. She makes a sizable bet. She says he's a ringer. So she knows she's trying to play the odds a little bit, and it blows up in her face. And she really has no recourse. Like, she doesn't tell them, save me or do anything. it's Omega who has to step up here and kind of make it all happen. And then they take Sid away. So what do you think about all of this as an intro to this episode?
I really love that this episode paid a lot of homage to Phantom Menace, to the point where even when we're in the race, like, you can hear a lot of the sounds of like pod racing, and the racers just like look a little bit different, but a lot of those same sounds sort of carried over, and it's great. And yeah, the fact that it appears to be legal to have weapon systems on these racers. Somebody fires their lasers into the crowd, kills a spectator, and everyone in the crowd seems unfazed by this. And then we get the announcer with the friendly reminder, literally, that Sofatoma Speedway is not liable for any injury, death, or disintegration. Just perfection. I loved every aspect of the race that we brought to this, and there are so many amazing comedic beats in this episode, in this first half in particular, with this announcer, and with, of course, Tay-O. Now, I'm not losing any sleep or losing any tears over Tay-O, sadly, but every single thing that he said, I feel like I had to write down every single thing because it was great. At one point, he refers to himself as an artist,
yes,
which I don't know if we've ever heard a droid do that before. I love that. He and the fact that I think he's talking to Wrecker at one point, where Wrecker asks him if he thinks that he can win the race. Tay-O says that he's going to ignore the obvious question, and then after a beat, just perfect. It's just perfect. And the fact that that they got John Ralphio himself, Ben Schwartz, to come in and play this role. It's who else could it? I don't think anybody else could have pulled this off as well as he did. It was just absolutely perfect. And even him going out with "I regret nothing" before he completely loses power. It's just fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. And yes, very much interested in sort of maybe a little bit more of Sid's backstory. I hope we sort of get a little bit more of that. I don't recall, have we ever used her full Christian name before, of Sidarin Scaleback?
Nope.
Or was that all news to us?
Nope. I think that's new.
That's a great point. Yeah, Mileggi,
I enjoy that
because nobody that we've met in season 1 has a history with her, so she has the upper hand. Like, a really subtle way of showing that Millegi knew her better than everybody else did. Like, they have a history. He knows her story. He knows her full name. It was just a really, it was a casual name drop that meant a lot, which I really liked.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. Like, there's no one who was above Sid who was in a scene with her that could have used her full name in a way that Millegi did. Clearly, Millegi having history here as well. Yeah, you're right about John Ralph. I mean, the idea of using John Ralph is so perfect with Ben Schwartz. I hope there's a Jenny Slate. Maybe there's a Hey-O droid. That would be so great. Maybe the sister droid to Hey-O. That would be awesome. That'd be awesome. Oh, God, those are my favorite episodes of Parks and Rec, those two. Shannon, the first half of the episode here, we get this. We talked about Tay-O. We've talked about, the way that Sid is kind of a little bit verbally unsettled by Millegi, even though she pushes back and challenges him to this race and puts a large money on it. Do you think there's, I don't know, do you think Sid has an ulterior goal? Does she think she has a little bit of, like her own reasons for doing the things that she's doing in this situation? It seems odd that Sid would be caught out and not understand how Jet Vermin, which is the name of the pilot
which
is a great name for
Jet
Venom. Jet Venom. Sorry. I meant to say Jet Venom. Turns on Tay-O and takes him out. You figure she would know that. So what do you think about this whole half? Do you believe that this might have been a big setup by Sid?
No.
Okay.
I think Sid obviously has a past, and we find out in her conversation where Millegi says, like, "Hey, once a hustler, always a hustler." So we're given a peek in that Sid is trying to be a better Trandoshan. At least that's what it appears. That's what it appears like. No, I think someone like Sid, you're hanging out on Ord Mantell, you have a past, you probably have some unpaid debts out there, but you think you have this ringer with Tay-O. It's like, here's a way for me to settle up and even make a little more coin on the side. And then when that doesn't happen, we do get a couple nice shots of a vulnerable looking Sid, mainly in the race when Tech is losing.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this was some grand plan. I think Sid, accidentally found herself behind the 8 ball, and luckily, the Bad Batch was there to help her out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it always makes me laugh, like with Mileggi, when you have this seeming physically capable bad guy with like these ham hock fists surrounded by little guards. Like even like the little Gamoran, I was just like, he doesn't need you all. Like in a moment, he could snap any of them in half. But I think it's a really, really fun visual. And to the Tay-O, since this is going to be a big Tay-O love fest. The design of that character. I mean, one of the funny things about Ben Schwartz as a performer, despite being immensely talented, is physically he's just funny looking. Like he's a tall, lanky dude, and the fact that like he is just all arms and legs. And when the design of Tay-O kind of physically matches him, and even sort of that mono expressive face, it's sort of, again, I saw John Raphael. Like, you know, the whole time, like just, you know, three or four perfect circles. And watching I'm looking for a word that's not coming ahead right now, but you see the bravado that Tay-O has and saying to Tech, you think you can make those split second instincts, and Tech's very matter of factness. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know everything about the game yet. Yeah. And then when he finds out enough about the game, he's like, okay, yeah, I got it. So it was just a really, really fun juxtaposition. And my desk, I am losing a lot of real estate with great figurines, but I would 100% put a Tay-O.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah, I want a Tay-O. Yeah, I'll take a Tay-O droid any day, especially if it's leaning in the way he does. Like just that little lean in stuff, that little like jab with his physical body is so great when you see the characterization.
Well, he moves a little bit like he's had like one too many cans of oil. You know what I mean? Like he's got that little bit of, let me tell you something, buddy. I'm good. Like
perfect.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll jump into the back half of the episode right after this.
Bum 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 bum.
I like that. That's good.
The March of
getting there.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so they end up putting Tay-O back together. They put the ship back together, and meanwhile, Tech is actually, as Shannon said, studying the plan, studying the design, because it's an interesting track. In my mind, the whole time, I'm like, this is Disney selling an aspect of a video game that's coming out soon. There's no way this is not an effing video game with those things popping up. And so he studied, don't go to the left, you know, this whole thing, studying the course there, of course.
The pod racing video game back in the day was great.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't imagine
really
another one.
I love that pod racing video game. We played it for hours and it was so good. You put it on high speed, like, oh man, I loved it.
I'm sure.
Sorry,
right? I would imagine. So.
All right, sorry. Continue.
No. So just when they put it all back together, and you have Tay-O ready to get on and do this race, we have the Kaneki moment, and we'll get to it in just a second. But first, we see Mileggi and Sid having this conversation in Mileggi's I don't know, suites, I guess you would say, there above the racetracks there, the back and forth, and he's trying to, you know, kind of suss out where she's at in terms of falling back into her old ways and all of that. And she's resisting, and she's saying she's got a crew. She's saying she's doing her own thing. She says she's walking her own path, kind of resisting everything that Mileggi is trying to essentially rope her back into. So we see that kind of happening with them. But then, as I said, we go back to Tay-O, who is all fully built now. He has the back. I mean, the whole scene with him, where are my arms and legs? You know, all this. Of course I can race. Where are my arms and legs? That great moment there. And then later when he's put together, having him as he's having this back and forth with Tech, we have the Kaneki moment when he's slammed into randomly by some pilot who just gets up and walks away from the accident like it's no big deal. And Mileggi shows up here as Wrecker and Tech pick up. I think it's Wrecker and Tech, or Wrecker and Omega pick up what's left of Tay-O, and Tay-O says, I regret nothing, and then clicks off. And we see that interaction. So Mileggi thinks, okay, it's done. It's a done deal. I've won. There's nothing more to do here. And then Tech steps up to the plate. Kind of interesting. I'm going to show a graphic a little bit later from a designer that I really appreciate what he thought, but totally steps up to the plate and says he will drive the ship. And what's great is while they're having this back and forth, Tech is actually thinking, you see him like thinking to himself, assessing everything, and then deciding, yes, actually, I will try out this race and figuring this all out. So jumps in. They agree to it. Mileggi's down for it, saying, I hope you know what you're getting into. Tech does the race. This is fantastic. Weaves in and out. Wrecker's going crazy, saying he's losing the whole time. Omega's trying to be encouraging. And I think you're right, Shannon. It would have been nice to have Tay-O throwing in some certain comments throughout this whole situation. Eventually, he does go to this tunnel that Sid said not to go into, which is the tunnel on the left. It is the quickest way around, but also the most dangerous way around. He's got to speed up, though, to be able to get through that tunnel. He figures out, because he's intelligent guy tech, that he has to dump the weapons. So he slides into the pit real quick, dumps the weapons, and then rolls off there. Was able to elude the two fighters there or two drivers there for Mileggi. Gets out through his whole thing and then ends up winning the race, saving Sid's hide. And they go up into the suite, both Wrecker, Omega, and Tech up there. And then you see Sid say thank you to Omega, and there's a moment of vulnerability, a real moment of vulnerability from Sid. And then she she says, I guess I owe you guys one. And Tech says, yes, I think you do, without any kind of emotion, just matter of fact. And then immediately Sid reverts back to the defense. I'll make it up to you. And they start walking out. And before the three clones can walk out, Mileggi says to them, that loyalty is great, but in Sid's case, don't be surprised if it's not returned in a critical moment. This leaving them something to think about. And they all walk out and have this conversation about it. And the episode ends. So we're left with a little bit of dread here by the end. So Laura, what do you think about how they handle all this? The race itself, Tech coming to the rescue. And then by the end, being left with this idea that, yeah, it's great that they did this. And this is good for the characters because we love them. But this could be something that comes back to bite them in the ass with Sid down the road.
I like that we're sort of leaving the door open with Sid, and we've still got that sort of unsuredness going on with her. I think Mileggi tells her, like hustlers like us never change. And I think in a way that's definitely true. I think that she'll probably be scheming and hustling until her dying day. But I like to think that there's a chance that she might just be using some of those skills for good. She's clearly not like in the sort of criminal underworld as much as she used to be, but she hasn't like retired and taken up gardening. I feel like she's sort of reapplying those skills and using some of them sometimes for mostly good, maybe not always totally good all the time. So it'll be really interesting to see where they take her through the rest of this season, because they do there's a lot of back and forth in this episode in particular where I am just not sure. I'm like, do I trust her or not? You pointed out this like sort of emotional moment that she has with Omega and with the rest of this group where she clearly is like, well, yeah, now I guess I owe you guys a little bit. And I think one of you mentioned it earlier. They're almost kind of out from under it when Mileggi takes her away. They're like, we don't, if she goes away, our problems go away. We don't have to worry that she's going to turn us into the Empire. We can do what Hunter wants and just kind of go live a more normal life and give Omega this more normal life. And of course, it's Omega that steps in as the moral compass to say, no, we do actually have to help her. So I like what we're doing with Sid, just giving a little bit more depth to her and giving her some new places to go, I think. The other thing that I thought was really interesting character-wise in this latter half of this episode was some of this stuff with Tech. There's great music playing over the entire race that Tech is racing in. The music is techno for Tech.
Oh,
we see what you did there, Kiners. Laura. We see it. We enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. At the very end, when he wins, the crowd is like going wild and cheering for this underdog who came from behind, was in last place for a good chunk of the race. And he's just observing the crowd with this indifferent expression before he salutes and walks away. And it's just such a Tech moment, and I just really like that for him. So I like that we're giving him again new places to go, but we're staying very true to who he is as a character. And I think that they've just found a really good balance with him in particular. And I like that we got a little bit more quality time with him in this episode.
Yeah, agreed. Shannon, what do you think about this back half of the action? The race was a little bit longer than the first race we saw. Obviously, in the first half, because we got to see all the ins and outs and the ways that this all goes down in the course. We got to see the unique thing, those things popping up, the different ways that they're using everything, the different weapons that are being used. We get introduced to all these racers. A couple of them look like C-3PO in different colored I don't know, armor, whatever it is, there, and we see some different versions, and everyone has a nickname, as I mentioned, except for Tech, and it becomes this weird interaction with the voiceover guy. It's almost like Bob Uecker in Major League. He's like, wait, he's just called Tech? That's it? That's all he's called? He's just looking around for his papers to get more information on Tech. So it's just a great little moment here. And then, yes, by the end, Tech, as Laura said, they're cheering for Tech, and he has to analyze even that. He's analyzing to understand what the right reaction, and then he gives him a little tip of the hat there. So what do you think? But then by the end, as I said, we have that that interesting note, because we'd seen Mileggi as a villain or the antagonist, I guess, as a majority of the episode. But by the end, he gives them a little bit of advice that seems to come from a place of really trying to warn them about something that may actually happen to them. So it's an interesting beat to give your antagonist here by the end of the episode. So what do you think about this back half of the episode and that whole race?
I mean, I love a multi-syllabic unique name. And so I went through and typed all these with Jet Venom, Bosco, the Mad Bomber Bricks, Steel Claw Kane, Vicious Vid Suntari, Haxon, the War Gnome Trajonics.
Yes.
This is my favorite one, possibly because of the action the droid did. Quick Draw Quasar, which had a battle droid head with a protocol droid body, because he stood up and did the 6-shooter to the crowd, that I thought was really, really funny. The Trickster Flash Roctor, and then this one is just a fantastic name, and I feel like they would insist on saying every syllable correctly. Hyper Rod on his 7-deuce blaster. That seems like that was probably just so much fun to come up with. And then, yes, the really, really great performance by the announcer actor comes in. And then Tech. That's it? Just Tech? I don't have anything about this. I love the airing of the dirty laundry that the announcer's just like, Rose messed up again. She didn't give me the second sheet. It was just comedically, it was just really, really funny. And because this was a lighter episode, despite the fact that we have 2 deaths that are used as punchlines, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, I did think the Kiner score, I'm immediately thinking of like Mario Kart, like, certain levels in Mario Kart. And just as they're inside those tunnels, just the animation again is just so gorgeous. Like you see how focused Tech is with this tunnel just flying past him. I do think I think Andor and again, this is not a comparison to Andor. I realize they're very different shows. But the moment that Andor used the tractor beam detritus missile that Stellan Skarsgård used, I was like, that kind of set a new level of action for me, and I wanted something like that with Tech winning the race between Jet Venom and Kane, because I was like, I kind of saw, it's telegraphed a little bit, like you see what's about to happen. It's like, okay, and again, it all looks great. I was just like, I just wanted that extra thing to really, really show just how freaking smart Tech is. And then getting to, I thought that was a great character moment of him just sort of analyzing this uproarious applause and kind of like, well, I guess do one of those. And the thing that was interesting about Millegi as a character is while being a hustler, being a gangster, there is a code there.
Seemed like there was a code.
Yeah, like his henchmen were ready to take him out, and he's like, no, like they won. They won fair and square.
Jet had the pistol was laying on right by Jet, and you had a feeling Jet was going to use that thing, and Millegi literally stops him from using that thing because we saw him trying to grab it and maybe spin around and shoot him in the back.
Yeah, it's that honor amongst thieves. And I think when you get a performer of note like Ernie Hudson with an interesting character like this, my guess is that we have not seen the last of Mileggi. I mean, you watch that interplay between him and Sid, and it's like, okay, we're going to find out specifically what they are talking about in terms of what Sid did in the past. And yeah, I mean, it almost seems like he's doing them a solid, like, hey, watch out for that one. So even though we do have this lighter, fun episode, that little bit of a foreboding tone that he throws out there, that's the type of thing that brings people back to your show.
Yeah, 100%. Mike, your thoughts on this back half of the episode? Anything stood out or anything we didn't quite cover that you want to make sure we stress?
I mean, I think you guys covered most of it. It was just so much fun. And yeah, the animation is absolutely spectacular through all of this. As far as the racers go, I spent more time than I'm willing to admit wondering how not one, but two protocol droids end up as racers in a riot race. Like, that is a journey. Like, that is a backstory that I want to know. I'm like they were like going through all of it, and I was like, is that a protocol droid? Is that a protocol droid? How in the hell? What? And then just, even though I think the whole C-3PO battle droid gag in Attack of the Clones is super cheeseball, seeing them reference the gag with the protocol droid body and the battle droid head, man, it makes me laugh now. Like, it didn't make me laugh when Attack of the Clones came out, but that guy was like, now that's funny. So that was really good. The thing about the race, and we talked about this on, maybe it was on our Willow review last week or something, but it's always great when a show surprises you. It's always great when a show does something unexpected and you're like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. But there's also something very satisfying about setting up the pins and knocking them down exactly right. So even though the second that they say, don't go into the left tunnel, you are pretty clear on the fact that Tech is going to go into the left tunnel. We all know that's going to happen. So when he goes in the left tunnel, it's not like we all went, oh my God, you went through the left tunnel. But they nailed it. Like, it was satisfying. Like, to Shannon's point, it would have been great if there had been like one or two more pluses to some of the action. That if like Tech getting out from between the two guys, he had done something that was a little bit unexpected so that you still knew it was happening, but there was a little bit of a surprise. But this was a very solid storytelling episode because it was satisfying. Like, even though you know what's going to happen, it happens, it goes exactly the way you think. But when Tech is standing there at the end and he saved the day and he gives his little salute, you're like, way to go, Tech. Not too shabby, Bad Batch. Like, you just feel good about it.
Also, Mike, he jumps down and he says, you guys look surprised. He jumps down, like, to him, it was, right? It was, of course I won. It wasn't even like Tay-O, who was like, you damn right I won. Tex is like, well, it makes logical sense I'd win.
It brings up an interesting point. It brings up an interesting point, which is, a lot of times if you're going to do an episode focused on one of your characters, the whole point of the episode is your character learns something. Your character goes like, so I did kind of wonder, I was like, oh, is this the episode where Tech thinks that he can only rely on his smarts, but then he realizes that maybe in life there's a little bit more. Like, there's always that, oh, is that what the lesson is? But there's also something very satisfying about a character like Tech going, no, I've got this, guys. And I was like, oh, Tech, I don't know if you do. You're very smart, but this is a whole other thing. Like, this is instinct, and you gotta go last. Like, it's. And he's like, no, I'm good. And then he, like, through the race, he's like, I need to go faster. I'm gonna get rid of my weapons. And everyone's like, the fucker, you can't get to riot race. You can't get rid. He's like, no, I got this. So, like, the whole episode, there's something really fun about it. You keep waiting for that moment where, oh, well, Tech is gonna learn something, or Tech is gonna have to do something different. And Tech gets to the end and he goes, no, guys, I told you I had it, and I've got it. We're good. You're like, all right, Tech. And in a way, even though that's not the usual thing, usually it's like, oh, Tech said, oh, now I realize this. There's something satisfying about a character being like, guys, this is who I am. And then you get to the end of the episode and he goes, I told you. This is who I am. And you're like, okay, noted, got it. And that was something really nice. As far as the Sid of it all, they're clearly setting something up. I agree with Shannon that I think we probably haven't seen the last of Millegi. I would like to see some more of him. I think he's a really fun character. Yeah. There's a world where Sid does betray them, and it frees them up to go do whatever they're going to do in the back half of the season. There's a world where Sid has the chance to betray them, and because of what happened particularly with Omega, she doesn't. And there's a world where it looks like Sid betrays them, but then it turns out she didn't really betray them, and she's like, I told you guys to trust me, but you don't listen. Like, so it could go, like, they're clearly setting something up, but the fun thing about a character like Sid is it's the opposite of what I was saying about Tech, where you set up the pins and you're like, I know how this is going to go. It's going to be satisfying. With Sid, I'm like, all right, it's a choose your own adventure. There's like 3 options here. You're probably going to do one of them, but seeing which one it's going to be is fun. And when it's all about betrayal and the back and forth, it's like a heist movie. It's like you think you know what's going on, but then you don't know what's going on. So it's going to be fun to see. Like, I think there's definitely more to Sid. I think we'll find out more of her story, and I think there will be a moment of betrayal, but how that moment lands, I am not clear on, and that's part of the fun.
Yeah, and I'll throw a 4th one out there, Michael. She might betray them on purpose as a way to get them to leave her employ so they can go and fight in the rebellion, because she realizes that's the better route for them. So she sets the whole thing up to betray them so they can leave instead of holding on or hanging on or anything like that, or having ties to her. It's the smarter move, a tough love move, to get them out to go fight in the rebellion. Because, you know, as you're talking, Mike, it occurred to me, there's no way you could have Echo and Hunter in this episode. They would be the guys, what are we doing? What are you guys doing? Like, they'd be the sourpusses that would kind of hold this back. And you might think Tech would be another one of the sourpusses as well. But the fact that they kind of turn that on its head in this episode is kind of brilliant, and works out to the point that by the end, when he does jump out and go, you guys look surprised, you know, and a record going, you were losing the whole race, man. You know, this whole thing, you can actually accept that without it being hubris or arrogance. It fits his character. So he wouldn't logically.
It's an interesting thing you bring up, because Wrecker very clearly has like a childlike personality. Like, he's big, he's strong, he can do whatever, but he's a giant teddy bear. Like, he's like, oh, he's a kid. He's very simple. Hunter and Echo are burdened with a lot of feels. Like, they both, Hunter is feeling a lot of things about Omega, a lot of things about his responsibilities. Echo is feeling a lot like they need to do more. He's very WWRD, like, what would Rex do? Like, he's very much like there's a lot of opinions happening. But Tech, to your point, you think because he's super smart, he's also going to be burdened. But in a lot of ways, this trio of Wrecker, Tech, and Omega, they are all very in it. Omega is very much like the heart of the group. She's the conscience. But Tech is like, hey, Tech, we need you to do this. Why? Because we need to get up there. Okay. Like, he's not overthinking things. For someone who's so smart, hey, here's a puzzle, Tech, and he goes, a puzzle. Okay. Like he's like not dealing with it. So it is kind of nice that it was a Hunter and Echo-less episode, because you just had the gang that's like, we're down to clown. What's going on? Races? Cool. I got it.
Let's make it happen. I like Wrecker struggling to say, I'm inclined to. He had a hard time saying inclined. There's too many syllables in the word. I thought that was a great moment by D. Bradley Baker to choose to say it that way as well. So just great stuff. Overall, any more we should talk about? Have we hit all the points? Anything else you guys want to say before we wrap up?
No.
Are we good? Okay. Mikey, do you
sometimes something's just fun.
Yeah, I agree. And this was a lot of fun.
You.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this spoiler review episode of the Bad Batch, episode 4. Yes, in the season 2. Is that right? Episode 4? Am I right on that?
Episode
okay.
4.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There are so many seasons going on right now of stuff. It's crazy trying to keep it all track, but a fantastic episode. I enjoyed the hell out of this one. I did. I really had a blast with this. It was fun. And a friend of ours, Laura, also enjoyed this episode. Did this awesome design, which I got to put up. Shout out to Brian Ward, who did this for Tech. Essentially taking Vin Diesel's shot from Fast and Furious. I thought it was genius. And another friend of the show, Wendy Lee, chimed in, family. Exactly, family. That's right. So great stuff from Brian Ward, who's fantastic when he does his graphic designs for Star Wars as well. So great stuff there from him. And I think that sums up the episode to a T. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching or listening to this spoiler review episode on Geek Buddies. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Look, if you like Nerf Nuggies, Please tell me where we can get some, because I would very much like to get some Nerf Nuggies. But once you have done that, you can also hit this like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content he's got. Leave your comments below. What did you think of this episode? Where do you think things are going? How does it compare to last week's episode? How does it compare to the rest of the Bad Batch? Let us know your thoughts. If you're listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some comments and some stars. Let us go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. And of course, speaking of hanging with us, big shout out to the great Laura Kelly, who joined us for another review here on the Bad Batch. We always love having you on, Laura. Please let people know where they can find you and everything that's going on.
Thank you so much for having me back, you guys. You can find me on Twitter at shutup_Laura, and you can find the show that I host with my friend Alice called Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour. You can find that on Twitter at Force Toast Pod. We'll have a new episode coming out on Tuesday, and our last episode we recorded, it included a review and recap of The High Republic, The Battle of Jeddah audio drama. So if you're into those, please give that a listen.
Good. That's good. All right, well, there you go. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode of the Bad Batch here from the
Geek
Buddies
And Laura Kelly.
Hey, everybody, thanks so much for watching this spoiler review of episode 4 of Bad Batch Faster. We appreciate it madly, and we also appreciate being powered and sponsored by the fine folks over at carbonhealth.com. Remember to go and visit them today for any of your healthcare questions, concerns, or needs. They've got 80+ locations in California, 100+ locations all over the country, and they have an app that you can download for any of those questions that pop up with healthcare or what have you. On the go, download the Carbon Health app today so you can see if there's a location near you or get checked out virtually right there from your own phone. All right, thanks so much for watching this episode, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode here from the Geek Buddies. Take care.